Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into some pretty fascinating territory today. We're going to explore those classic biblical stories, you know the ones, but this time we're taking a different approach.
That's right. We're using Jordan B. Peterson's book, We Who Wrestle with God, as a sort of lens, to view these stories in a new light, to uncover the deeper meaning they hold.
Okay, so Peterson starts off by talking about the power of stories, right? He makes this point that humans, well, we've always used stories to understand the world around us, to make sense of things, pass on wisdom.
And what's interesting is he doesn't just stop there. He goes on to argue that some stories, like the ones we find in the Bible, they've stuck around for so long because they tap into something much deeper, almost like universal truths, those psychological and social patterns that resonate across cultures and time.
It's like they're speaking to something fundamental about the human experience, something that's hardwired into us. And that brings up a good question for our listeners. What about you? What stories have shaped your worldview? I mean, those narratives that have really stuck with you, the ones that have shaped your values or influenced how you see the world.
Yeah. It's a great question to consider because whether we realize it or not, those stories we carry, they often guide our decisions in ways we might not even consciously realize. They become this framework, through which we interpret everything around us.
Okay, so speaking of stories that shape our worldview, let's jump into a specific one that Peterson analyzes in depth. Cain and Abel. I mean, talk about a story that has stood the test of time. Sibling rivalry, jealousy, the struggle between good and evil. It's all there.
And Peterson really peels back the layers of this story. He sees Cain as representing something very profound, something very relevant, really, to all of us. That shadow self, the darker side of human nature that we often, we try to deny it's even there.
Right? That resentment, that pride, that unwillingness to make sacrifices, it's all part of it. And it can lead us down some pretty destructive paths.
Exactly. And it's interesting because he doesn't present Cain as this purely evil villain. He paints him as a complex character, someone we can all relate to, at least on some level.
Yeah, haven't we all felt that pang of envy? Yeah. That resentment, those moments where we struggle with making sacrifices, especially if it means putting someone else's needs before our own.
Exactly. And Peterson, he highlights this really fascinating detail in the story, the description of Abel's offerings to God. He describes them as the fat thereof, symbolizing, giving your best, the most valuable things you have to something beyond yourself. It's like this idea of delaying gratification, of investing in something larger than just your immediate desires.
It's like those self-help books that talk about finding purpose and fulfillment beyond just chasing, material success. It's almost like this ancient story is giving us a timeless lesson, a warning about the dangers of giving in to that me-first mentality.
And the consequences of those choices, well, as the story shows, they can be pretty devastating. Cain's inability to manage his resentment, his unwillingness to sacrifice, it leads him down this path of destruction.
Which is a good reminder that our choices, they really do matter. Even those small, seemingly insignificant decisions we make every day. Those little acts of selfishness or generosity, they all add up. And they shape not only our own lives, but also the world around us.
Absolutely. And this idea of choices and consequences, particularly within the context of human nature, it connects to another story that Peterson talks about, the Tower of Babel. It's a story all about ambition, really, especially when it comes to pursuing power through technology.
It's almost like this ancient cautionary tale, right, from the dawn of civilization, warning us about the dangers of overreaching, of letting our technological advancements get ahead of, our ethical considerations. And it's so interesting how Peterson connects this story to our modern world.
Oh, he definitely does. He points out this fascinating detail about Cain being described as the first city builder, the ancestor of, those who created tools, weapons, all of that. And he links this lineage to the builders of the Tower of Babel, the people who tried to reach heaven, through their own ingenuity. It's a symbol of that human desire to kind of, transcend our limits using technology.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to our own time, isn't he? I mean, think about the ethical dilemmas we're facing right now. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, the power of social media. Are we building our own towers of Babel, so focused on progress and innovation that we forget about ethics, about compassion, about our connection to something bigger than ourselves?
It's a question worth asking, that's for sure, because, technology in itself, it's not inherently good or bad. It's a tool, really, an amplifier. And like any powerful tool, it can be used for good or for, not so good.
It all comes down to intention. right? What are we aiming for? What are we willing to sacrifice in our pursuit of progress? Those ancient stories, I mean, when we view them through this psychological lens, it's really amazing how much they can help us grapple with those questions in a really profound way.
Absolutely. And speaking of sacrifice, this brings us to another recurring theme that Peterson unpacks. The idea that true growth, both for individuals and for society, it often requires us to let go of something valuable for a greater good.
And he doesn't just talk about sacrifice in this abstract, philosophical way. He dives into specific biblical stories where sacrifice is front and center, like the story of Abraham, his willingness to sacrifice his son Isaac.
Oh, that story is intense. So emotionally charged, and it raises all sorts of questions about faith, about obedience, about the nature of sacrifice itself. Peterson, well, he sees it as a metaphor for those really difficult choices we all face in life. Those moments where we're called to surrender our own desires, our own comfort for something that transcends our individual needs.
It's like choosing the long game,
Right.
delaying gratification, investing in something larger than ourselves. And that's tough. I mean, it can be painful. It can be really difficult.
It can be, definitely. But tell me, what stands out to you about this whole concept of sacrifice? Have there been moments in your own life where you've had to make tough choices, to let go of something you valued, either to achieve something bigger or just to stay true to your principles?
That's a good question. It makes me think about those times when, I've had to step outside my comfort zone to face those challenges that forced me to grow. And it's never easy in the moment, but looking back, it's often those times of struggle, of sacrifice that have shaped me the most.
That's powerful. It's fascinating how these ancient stories, when we look at them this way, can really illuminate our own personal experiences. They reveal those universal patterns that connect us across time and cultures. And speaking of connections, this idea of sacrifice, well, it actually links to another really interesting story that Peterson analyzes, the story of Lot and the angels visiting Sodom. It's a story that explores hospitality, but also the potential for things to go wrong.
Right. There's that stark contrast between Lot's genuine hospitality and the perverse desires of those men of Sodom. And it's fascinating that Peterson points out this detail where the angels, they strike the men of Sodom with blindness, symbolizing their inability to see the truth or to, recognize the sacredness of their guests.
Yeah, it's a powerful image. It's like a cautionary tale about what happens when we lose sight of our values, when we allow our base desires to override our sense of compassion and morality. It's a lot to think about. I mean, it makes me wonder about those situations where maybe we're tempted to look the other way or to enable harmful behavior, even within ourselves. It's a reminder to examine our own blind spots, those areas where we might be resisting the truth or clinging to patterns that don't really serve us anymore.
It is, isn't it? And perhaps it's an opportunity for us to consider how we practice hospitality in our own lives, to think about the boundaries we might need to set, to protect ourselves, but also to remain open to offering genuine welcome and support to others.
It's a delicate balance between compassion and discernment, between setting healthy boundaries and staying open to connection.
It is, and it's through engaging with these stories, with their complexities and their nuanced characters, that we can begin to navigate those challenges with greater wisdom and self-awareness. Absolutely. And speaking of challenges, this is where things get even more interesting. We're about to dive into this whole idea of the call to adventure. What it means to wrestle with those forces that challenge us to think differently about ourselves, about the world, even about, the concept of God.
The call to adventure. Yeah. It's this recurring motif that we see throughout the Bible. Individuals being called to this higher purpose. Abraham's journey, Moses encountering the burning bush, Jonah's reluctant mission to Nineveh. It's all there.
It's not just random adventuring, right? It's about something bigger, something that transcends the individual. Peterson, he sees these calls as representing this innate human yearning for meaning and purpose, that drive to find our place in the grand scheme of things, even when we're faced with challenges and uncertainty.
And those encounters with the divine, or with whatever it is that calls us beyond ourselves, they can be awe-inspiring, but they can also be pretty terrifying. Think about the detail of Moses' face being so radiant after he meets with God. He had to veil himself. It's like even just a glimpse of the transcendent can be both illuminating and, kind of overwhelming.
It really makes you think, what's your burning bush?
Yeah.
What call to adventure are you ignoring or avoiding? What's that thing that whispers to you deep down inside, urging you to step outside your comfort zone and, well, embrace something bigger?
Yeah, it's a powerful question to sit with, isn't it? Because sometimes those calls, they come disguised as challenges or uncertainty or those nagging doubts that just won't go away. But they also hold the potential for transformation, for growth, for a life that's lived with more meaning, more intention.
And that wrestling, that grappling with those big questions, it's not always easy. It can feel like a tough match. But maybe, like Peterson suggests, it's through those struggles, those confrontations with the unknown, that we really discover who we are and, well, what we're capable of.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's in those moments of wrestling, of questioning, of pushing against the boundaries of our understanding that we come face to face with, well, face to face with the divine or whatever it is that compels us to, to transcend our limitations and embrace a life of greater purpose and meaning.
Wow, this deep dive is already giving me a lot to think about. I'm eager to hear more of your insights.
Yeah, there's so much more to uncover. It's really amazing how, when we look at these biblical stories through a psychological lens, we can see just how relevant they still are to our lives today. It's like holding up a mirror, revealing those timeless patterns of human behavior, that struggle for meaning, that tension between our desires and our aspirations.
It's true. And speaking of aspirations, I'm curious about how Peterson presents the whole concept of God, because it's not always about this, this bearded figure in the clouds, right?
Mm.
He suggests that the idea of God can represent something much broader, like maybe the ultimate good we strive for, the highest ideal, those values that guide us towards a more meaningful and purposeful life.
That's a great point. And what's interesting is he doesn't present this aim, as he calls it, as something that's static or, fixed. He sees it as something that evolves as we grow and learn. Like our understanding of the good, of what's truly valuable, it deepens and expands, right? As we experience new things, as we grapple with challenges, as we refine our own sense of morality.
So it's not just about following a set of rules or blindly obeying some, external authority. It's more about this ongoing process of self-discovery, of aligning ourselves with those principles that resonate with our deepest values and lead us towards a life of, maybe integrity and purpose. It's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, definitely. And it's a journey that often involves wrestling with those big questions, those existential dilemmas that, they've haunted humanity since, the beginning of time. And Peterson, he talks a lot about this, about the search for meaning, for that sense of purpose that gives our lives direction and, significance.
And he makes a really compelling argument that work, especially the kind of work that involves sacrifice and striving towards a higher goal, it's a fundamental source of meaning.
Yeah.
It's not just about, punching the clock or chasing a paycheck. It's about contributing to something bigger than ourselves, about using our talents, our efforts to make a positive impact.
And that connects so beautifully with the whole concept of sacrifice we were talking about earlier. When we engage in work that's meaningful, we're often choosing to delay gratification, to invest our time and energy in something that, it might not yield immediate rewards, but ultimately it contributes to, to a greater good. It's about playing the long game.
Exactly. And those choices, even those small, seemingly insignificant decisions we make every day, they can ripple outward.
Yeah.
It's like we're all contributing to this grand tapestry of human experience. And our individual threads, when woven together with, intention and purpose, they create something truly remarkable.
They do. And this brings us to a really crucial question that Peterson explores. What does it mean to do well in life? He challenges that conventional notion that success is all about, material wealth or social status. Instead, he suggests that true success lies in aligning ourselves with what's good, with those values that lead to a life of integrity, of purpose, of fulfillment.
It's about becoming the best version of ourselves, not in a superficial way, but in a way that reflects our deepest values and aspirations. And that often involves, confronting those inner demons, those temptations to take shortcuts, to put our own self-interest above, the well-being of others.
Exactly. And it brings us back to the story of Cain and Abel. Cain's downfall, was his inability to make the right sacrifice, to choose the path of good, to overcome that resentment that ultimately led him to that terrible act. His inability to do well, as Peterson puts it, had these devastating consequences, not just for himself, but for his brother, for humanity as a whole.
It's a stark reminder that our choices, they have real-world consequences.
Hmm.
And that striving to do well, to live in alignment with those principles that, well, that elevate us and contribute to a better world, it's an ongoing process, something that requires constant vigilance and effort.
It does, and it's a journey that's often filled with, challenges, with setbacks, with those moments where we falter, we make choices we regret. And Peterson, he explores this through the story of Noah and the flood. Noah is chosen to survive, but he's not portrayed as this flawless hero. He's human. He has flaws. He makes mistakes.
It's interesting because Noah is described as, finding grace in the eyes of the Lord. He's not perfect, but he's righteous enough. He's striving to do good, and that's what ultimately saves him, and his family. It's a reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy of redemption, to be agents of good in the world.
Exactly. And Noah's story, it also highlights this important concept of preparedness. Recognizing the need for change, taking action to protect what's valuable, both in our own lives and in the world around us. He heeds the warnings, right? He builds the ark. He prepares for the coming storm, literally and, maybe metaphorically too.
And in doing so, he ensures the survival, not just of his family, but of the potential for a new beginning, a chance for humanity to start fresh.
He does. But Peterson also cautions against complacency. Against taking those hard-won blessings for granted. Remember Noah's son, Ham, the one who mocks his father? Well, his descendants, the Canaanites, they're destined to be servants because of their lack of respect for the sacrifices that were made to ensure their survival. It's a reminder that we need to honor those who came before us, to learn from their mistakes, and to carry the torch forward, with humility and gratitude.
It makes me think about those times in my own life where I've, taken things for granted, where I've failed to appreciate the efforts of others or the sacrifices that have been made, really, to create the opportunities I have today. It's a call to cultivate a deeper sense of gratitude, to recognize how interconnected our lives are and to contribute to the well-being of future generations.
That's beautifully put. And this thread of recognizing those who came before us and learning from their mistakes, it connects back to the Tower of Babel story, which we touched on earlier. Peterson links this story back to Cain, highlighting that lineage of, those who seek to dominate, to control, those who prioritize technological advancement without considering, the ethical, maybe even spiritual consequences.
Right. The Tower of Babel, with its ambition to reach heaven through, just human ingenuity, it's this powerful symbol of overreaching, of trying to transcend our limitations without acknowledging the inherent order of things, the need for humility, for aligning our creations with a higher purpose.
And that raises a critical question that really resonates with our modern world. Are we building our own Towers of Babel today? I mean, with our pursuit of technological progress, with our obsession with innovation and efficiency, are we losing sight of, those fundamental human values that give our lives meaning and purpose?
It's easy to get swept up in it all, isn't it? The allure of what's new, what's shiny, what's technologically advanced. But what are we sacrificing in the process? Are we neglecting our relationships, our communities, our connection to nature, even our own inner lives?
It's a valid concern. And Peterson, he argues that true progress, it involves more than just technological advancement. It requires moral and spiritual growth as well.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between innovation and responsibility, between pushing the boundaries of what's possible and preserving those values that make us truly human.
Like we need to cultivate a deeper sense of wisdom, of discernment, to guide our actions and ensure that our creations, that they serve humanity rather than, becoming instruments of our own destruction. And speaking of navigating these complex challenges, Peterson offers some insights through the story of Abraham. He highlights Abraham's willingness to follow God's call, even when it meant leaving everything behind, venturing into the unknown.
Abraham's journey, it's a powerful example of faith and courage. He's willing to sacrifice his comfort, his security, his known world, all to pursue a higher calling, a purpose that transcends his own individual needs and desires.
And it's not blind obedience either. Abraham, he questions God, he wrestles with his doubts, he negotiates. It's this dynamic relationship, a dialogue, where both parties are actively engaged.
That's an important point. It's a reminder that true faith, it's not about blind acceptance or unquestioning obedience. It's about engaging with those big questions, seeking understanding, finding our own unique path, even when it leads us into uncharted territory.
And that path often involves sacrifice, as we see in the story of Abraham's willing to sacrifice his son Isaac. It's a test of his faith, a demonstration of his commitment to God. But it's also a story that pushes the boundaries of, what we might consider morally acceptable.
It does. And Peterson, he interprets the story not literally, but metaphorically, as a representation of, well, the sacrifices we're all called to make in life. Those moments where we have to let go of what we hold most dear, surrender our ego, our desires to something, something greater than ourselves. And, it's interesting. It's often through those acts of letting go that we discover our true selves, our deepest purpose, a sense of meaning that goes beyond our own individual lives.
There's something really profound in that, isn't there? It's like we have to lose ourselves to truly find ourselves. And sometimes that loss, well, it can feel like a death, a letting go of who we thought we were, the dreams we held on to, the attachments that don't serve us anymore.
It can feel that way, definitely. But it's often through those experiences of loss and sacrifice, those dark nights of the soul, that we experience the most profound growth, the most significant transformation. And it's important to remember that even those who walk with God, those who strive to do good, they're still human. They make mistakes, they stumble, they're tempted to deceive. Peterson explores this through the story of Abraham and Sarah in Egypt.
Oh, right. When Abraham, out of fear for his own safety, he lets Pharaoh take Sarah as his wife. It's a moment of weakness, a betrayal of trust, a reminder that even the most righteous among us, we can succumb to fear. We can make choices that we later regret.
We can. It just underscores the fact that the path of good, it's not always, easy or straightforward. It's a journey with twists and turns, with moments of darkness and doubt. And even those who strive to live in alignment with their values, they're going to make mistakes along the way.
And that's okay. I mean, it's part of being human, right? It's through those mistakes, those stumbles, those moments of recognizing our own imperfections that we learn, that we grow, that we become more compassionate, more understanding of ourselves and of others.
I agree. And speaking of learning and growth, Abraham's story isn't just about his own personal journey. It's also about the legacy he passes on to his descendants. Isaac, his son, and Jacob, his grandson, they each grapple with their own challenges, make their own unique contributions to this, to this unfolding narrative.
Jacob's story, it's particularly fascinating to me. He's such a complex character, both blessed and flawed. Someone who starts out on a path of deception, but ultimately, he finds redemption through his struggles, through his encounters with the divine.
He does. He's a trickster, a schemer. I mean, remember how he deceives his brother Esau to steal his birthright? But then, he wrestles with God, literally wrestles with God, and he emerges from that struggle transformed, marked both physically and, spiritually.
It's a powerful testament to the idea that even those who start out on the wrong path, they can find their way back.
Yeah.
That it's never too late to change, to align ourselves with good, to fulfill our potential.
It's never too late. And Jacob's journey also highlights the importance of hospitality, something we talked about earlier. The story of his encounter with Laban, his uncle, it's a fascinating exploration of the complexities of welcoming others, the obligations and expectations that come with it, and the potential for both generosity and, even exploitation within those relationships.
Right, because hospitality, as we've seen, it can be a powerful force for good, but it can also be, it can be distorted, it can be abused. It's a reminder that even in our interactions with those closest to us, we need to be mindful of, power imbalances, the importance of setting healthy boundaries.
We do. And this leads us to a pretty dramatic turn in Jacob's story. The episode of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a tale of depravity, a city consumed by its own wickedness, a stark reminder of the destructive potential of human nature when it's divorced from morality and compassion.
The contrast between Lot's hospitality and the perverse desires of those men of Sodom, it's striking. It's like this clash between civilization and, barbarism.
Yeah.
A reminder that even in the midst of darkness, there are those who strive to uphold the good, to offer refuge to those in need, to resist those forces of chaos and destruction.
It is. And it's a story that raises those uncomfortable questions about the limits of tolerance, the boundaries between acceptance and enabling evil. How much are we willing to tolerate in the name of, peace or acceptance? At what point do we need to draw a line, and how do we even discern where that line is?
It's a challenge we face even today, isn't it? In a world that's so polarized, where different opinions and beliefs are often met with hostility and judgment. How do we engage in meaningful dialogue? How do we find common ground and uphold those values that promote a just and compassionate society without compromising our own principles or enabling harmful behaviors.
It's not easy. It requires a willingness to engage with those uncomfortable truths, to recognize the complexities of human nature, and to hold space for both the light and the shadow, both within ourselves and in others.
And maybe to recognize that sometimes the most compassionate act is to stand against evil, to challenge injustice, to protect those who are vulnerable, even if it means, facing conflict or disrupting the status quo.
I agree. And while the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is a cautionary tale, a warning about the consequences of unchecked depravity, it also offers a glimmer of hope in the form of Lot's rescue. He and his family, they're spared from the destruction. It's a testament to the idea that even in the midst of darkness, there's always the possibility of, salvation, of redemption, of a new beginning.
It's powerful. A reminder that even when things seem hopeless, even when the world feels, consumed by chaos and despair, there's always a chance for a course correction, for a return to those values that uphold human dignity, that foster a more just and compassionate world.
There is. And that sometimes even the most flawed among us can be instruments of grace and mercy.
In this idea of redemption through struggle, it's beautifully illustrated in the episode of Jacob's wrestling match with God. It's a story that's so rich with symbolism. It portrays that inner battle we all face. As we grapple with our own limitations, our fears, our doubts, those forces that challenge our understanding of ourselves and the world.
And it's through that struggle, that wrestling match with the divine, that Jacob emerges, transformed. He receives a new name, Israel, which means he who wrestles with God. It's a testament to the idea that it's through our challenges, through our confrontations with the unknown, that we truly discover who we are, what we're capable of.
It's like those experiences, those moments of intense struggle, of uncertainty, they're the crucibles in which our character is forged, right? Where our resilience is tested.
Yeah.
Where we ultimately discover our true strength, our purpose.
They are. And it's through those encounters with the divine, with that which challenges our limited perspectives and pushes us beyond our comfort zones, that we experience the transformative power of, grace, of forgiveness, a love that transcends our human understanding.
So we've seen how Jacob's journey, it's marked by both deception and redemption, but challenges and transformations, by those moments of darkness and those glimpses of transcendence. But his story, like Abraham's, is also about the legacy he passes on, to future generations. His 12 sons, they become the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel, each carrying their own unique gifts and challenges, their own stories woven into the larger tapestry of human experience.
It's true. It's a reminder that our individual stories, they're intertwined with the larger narrative of our families, our communities, and ultimately of humanity as a whole. We're all connected, and our actions, our choices, our struggles, our triumphs, they all ripple outward, impacting those around us and shaping the world we inhabit.
And speaking of epic narratives that have shaped the course of history, let's shift our focus to the story of Moses, a figure who embodies, leadership, courage, that relentless struggle for liberation from oppression and injustice.
Ah, Moses. His story is a testament to the power of a single individual to challenge the status quo, to inspire hope, to lead people out of slavery and into a new era of freedom and possibility.
And it all begins with a burning bush, right? That powerful symbol of that divine spark, that inner calling that urges us to step outside our comfort zones, to confront injustice, to embrace a higher purpose, even when it seems, daunting or even impossible.
It is, and it's a reminder that those moments of revelation, those calls to action, they can come in the most unexpected places, in the quiet whispers of our hearts and sudden flashes of insight, even in those seemingly ordinary events that shake us awake and change the course of our lives.
And Moses' encounter with Pharaoh, this is a classic example of that clash between good and evil, right? Between those who seek to dominate and control and those who, yearn for freedom, for justice. A world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. It's a battle that plays out not just on the political stage, but also within each of us as we grapple with our own inner demons, those fears and doubts that can keep us enslaved to limiting beliefs and prevent us from reaching our full potential.
That's right. And it's through that struggle, that confrontation with the powers that be, both internal and external, that we discover our true strength, our capacity for resilience, our ability to lead both ourselves and others towards a more just and compassionate world.
And Moses, he's often portrayed as this larger-than-life hero, But he's not without his flaws, his doubts. He has those moments of frustration, of despair. He makes mistakes. He questions God. He struggles to maintain his faith in the face of, overwhelming challenges. But ultimately, he rises to the occasion, guided by his unwavering commitment to justice and his belief in the inherent goodness of humanity.
He does. And his story is a reminder that leadership, it's not about perfection. It's about showing up even when we're afraid, about persevering in the face of adversity, about learning from our mistakes, and about inspiring others through our actions and our unwavering commitment to a better future.
And in doing so, he inspires a whole people, right, to believe in themselves, to claim their freedom, to embark on this perilous journey toward a promised land, a place where they can live in peace, in dignity, in harmony. The Exodus, the story of the Israelites escaping from slavery in Egypt, it's this powerful metaphor for that human yearning for liberation, that collective struggle to break free from the chains that bind us, whether those chains are, physical, emotional, or spiritual.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing our inherent worth, our right to live in freedom and to pursue our dreams without fear of oppression or persecution. And it's a journey that often involves facing those internal and external forces that seek to maintain the status quo, that want to keep us enslaved to limiting beliefs, to prevent us from stepping into our full potential.
And the parting of the Red Sea, that miraculous event that allows the Israelites to escape Pharaoh's army. Yeah. It's such a powerful symbol of the seemingly impossible becoming possible, right? When we align ourselves with a higher purpose, when we tap into that collective power of faith, of courage, of determination.
It is. It's a reminder that even when the odds seem insurmountable, even when we feel, trapped and powerless, there's always hope. There's always the possibility of a breakthrough, of a dramatic shift in the course of events that opens up new pathways, new possibilities towards freedom and liberation.
But even after escaping Egypt, that journey to freedom, it's not always easy. It's not always straightforward. The Israelites, they still face challenges. They doubt, they complain, they're tempted to turn back, They long for the familiarity of their former lives, even though those lives were marked by suffering, by oppression.
Right. Their struggles in the wilderness, their longing for the comforts of Egypt, it reflects those challenges we all face, and our own journeys towards personal growth and liberation. It's so easy to fall back into old patterns, to cling to what's familiar, even when it doesn't serve us anymore, to resist change, even when it holds the promise of something better.
It does. And it's in those moments of doubt, of temptation, that we need to remember, why we embarked on this journey in the first place. To reconnect with that inner compass, that sense of purpose that guides us forward, even when the path ahead is, uncertain.
We do. And to recognize that true freedom, it's not about the absence of challenges. It's about the courage to face those challenges, to learn from them, and to keep moving forward even when it's difficult.
And this brings us to the story of the golden calf. While Moses is up on Mount Sinai, receiving the Ten Commandments, the Israelites, they're down below, feeling impatient, fearful. They lose faith. They create an idol to worship. It's a moment of, backsliding, of succumbing to the temptation of immediate gratification, of seeking comfort in the familiar rather than trusting in the unknown.
It is. And it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing sight of the bigger picture, of sacrificing long-term goals for short-term comfort, of letting our fears, our doubts cloud our vision and lead us astray from our true purpose.
And it highlights the importance of cultivating that strong inner compass, staying connected to those principles that guide us, nurturing our faith in something greater than ourselves, even when the path ahead is, it's uncertain.
It does. And despite his frustration, his anger, Moses, he ultimately forgives the Israelites and he continues to lead them forward. It's a testament to his compassion, his understanding of human nature, his capacity to see the good even in those who have, strayed, and his unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption.
It's a reminder that true leadership, it's not about perfection or wielding power over others. It's about guiding, supporting, inspiring others, even when they falter. It's about holding space for both their strengths and their weaknesses, and recognizing that we're all on this journey together, learning, growing, evolving as we go.
We are. And this brings us to the Ten Commandments, those foundational principles that Moses receives on Mount Sinai. These aren't just, arbitrary rules handed down from on high. They represent, a code of conduct, a set of guidelines for living a life that promotes harmony, justice, reverence for what's sacred.
They provide a framework for building a just and compassionate society, one that honors the dignity of each individual, recognizes our interconnectedness. They challenge us to, to live in alignment with our highest values, to choose the path of good, to treat others with respect, and to strive to become, well, the best versions of ourselves, not just for our own benefit, but for the betterment of, of humanity as a whole.
They do. The Ten Commandments, it's like a blueprint for creating a world where individuals can thrive, where communities can flourish, and where peace, justice, and compassion prevail.
And these principles, they're just as relevant today as they were, thousands of years ago, in a world that often feels chaotic, uncertain, where technology is changing everything, the way we live, the way we work, the way we interact. We need these guiding principles, these ethical foundations, maybe even more than ever. They remind us of what truly matters, of the values that endure, and of the responsibility we each have to contribute to a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world.
Absolutely. And as we continue to explore these stories and, how they relate to our lives today, it's important to remember that they're not just about external laws and, societal structures. They also speak to those internal struggles, those inner battles that we all face as we grapple with our own shadow selves, those temptations, those doubts, those fears that threaten to hold us back from living in alignment with our highest values and aspirations.
And that brings us to the story of Moses' encounter with God on Mount Sinai, a moment of, profound spiritual transformation, a glimpse into the transcendent, a reminder of the human capacity for connecting with something greater than ourselves.
Remember that detail about Moses' face being so radiant after meeting God that he had to veil himself? It's like this, this direct contact with the divine, with that source of infinite love, wisdom, power. It can be both awe-inspiring and, kind of overwhelming.
It really suggests that these encounters with the sacred, they can fundamentally change us. Our perceptions, our values, our understanding of the world. They can leave us forever changed, marked by the experience in ways we might not even fully comprehend.
They can. And sometimes those changes, they require a period of, integration, of adjusting to this new way of seeing, of being in the world, of allowing the, the wisdom, the insights from those encounters to really seep into our consciousness and transform us from the inside out.
It's like we need time to process those profound experiences, to let them, reshape our understanding of ourselves and the world, and to find ways to integrate those insights into our daily lives.
We do. And while Moses experiences this profound transformation on Mount Sinai, the journey's not over. Not for him, not for the Israelites.
Yeah.
They still have to navigate the wilderness, face their fears, learn to trust, and ultimately, claim their place in the promised land. That place of abundance, of freedom, of fulfillment that awaits them.
Their journey, like ours, it's a metaphor, right? For the challenges we face in life, the obstacles that test our faith, our courage, our resolve. It's about learning to navigate the unknown, to trust in the process, and to emerge from those experiences, stronger, more resilient, more deeply connected to our true selves.
It is. And it's a journey that requires both, individual effort and collective support. The Israelites, they need each other. They need to work together to support each other, to share the burdens of the journey, and to celebrate their triumphs together.
It's a good reminder that we're not meant to go it alone. We need community, connection, a sense of belonging to truly thrive. We need those people who will walk alongside us, challenge us, support us, remind us of our own strength and resilience when we falter or lose our way.
We do. And this brings us to the story of the spies who are sent into Canaan to scout out the land. They come back with these tales of giants, of fortified cities, and the Israelites, while they're overcome with fear, they lose heart.
It's a classic example of the power of fear to paralyze us, isn't it? To prevent us from moving forward, to keep us trapped in those cycles of, doubt and self-sabotage that prevent us from claiming our potential and creating the lives we truly desire.
It is, and it highlights the importance of courage, of choosing faith over fear, even when the odds seem, insurmountable, even when our minds conjure up those worst-case scenarios. When that inner voice whispers tales of, doubt and defeat.
It's a choice that often requires a leap of faith, a willingness to trust in something, beyond our own limited understanding, to believe in the possibility of a better future, and to take action even when we don't have all the answers.
It does. And this brings us to the story of Joshua, Moses' successor. He embodies courage, determination, and this unwavering belief in the possibility of victory.
Joshua, he leads the Israelites into Canaan, he conquers Jericho, he divides the land. He's a testament to the power of vision, of setting our sights on a goal and pursuing it with, relentless determination, even when faced with obstacles that seem impossible to overcome.
He is. And his story reminds us that sometimes the greatest obstacles, they're not external, They're internal. It's our own fears, our doubts, our limiting beliefs, those inner voices of negativity, of self-sabotage that often hold us back from achieving our dreams, from fulfilling our potential.
It's like we have to conquer those inner giants, to face those shadows, to silence those voices of doubt and fear in order to step into our full power and create the lives we're meant to live.
We do. And to remember that true victory, it's not just about external achievements, but about the internal transformation that happens when we overcome our limitations, when we embrace our strengths, when we step into alignment with our true selves.
Okay, so Joshua leads the Israelites into the Promised Land. They've conquered their enemies. They've established a new society, a place where they can finally rest, enjoy the fruits of their labors. But their journey, it's not over yet. They still face challenges. They still struggle to live in alignment with God's laws. They still experience those moments of backsliding, of rebellion, those human moments of weakness and fallibility that remind us that even in the midst of victory, we're still works in progress.
We are. Their story, it's a reminder that the human journey is ongoing, that there's always room for growth, for improvement, that even after achieving great things, we still need to, stay vigilant, committed to the path of good, and willing to course correct when we stray.
It's not about reaching some, final destination, some state of perfect enlightenment or, unwavering righteousness. It's about that ongoing process of striving, of learning, of evolving, of facing our shadows, embracing our imperfections, and becoming more fully who we're meant to be.
It is. And that process often involves confronting those parts of ourselves that resist change. Those patterns of thought, those behaviors that keep us stuck, those inner voices that whisper tales of doubt, of inadequacy, and those temptations that lure us away from the path of integrity, of purpose.
It's like we're in this constant dance, right? This back and forth between our aspirations and our limitations. Between our desire to do good and those moments where we fall short of our own ideals.
We are. And it's through that dance, through that wrestling match with our own humanity that we discover our greatest strengths, our capacity for resilience, our potential for growth, and our ability to contribute.
Wow, that last segment really gave me a lot to think about. It's like we're peeling back these layers of meaning, uncovering these timeless truths hidden within these ancient stories.
It really is. It's amazing how when you look at these narratives through this, psychological lens, they offer these incredible insights into the human condition, insights that are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago.
And speaking of relevance, something that really stood out to me was this idea of the spirit of the divine. Peterson argues that this spirit isn't limited to, just religious context. It can show up in all sorts of ways, even in secular realms.
Exactly. He suggests that the spirit of the divine, it's that which calls us to a higher purpose, that spark of inspiration that ignites our passions, that drive to create, to explore, to push the boundaries of what's possible.
It's like that feeling of awe you get when you experience something truly beautiful, whether it's a work of art, a breathtaking landscape, or even, a profound act of human kindness.
Right. And it's that spirit, that same spirit that fuels our desire to make a difference, to contribute to something larger than ourselves, to leave a positive mark,
So it doesn't matter if you're a devout believer or a skeptic, you can still tap into this spirit, this force that calls us to, transcend our limitations, to strive for excellence, to become more fully, who we're meant to be.
And Peterson suggests that we can cultivate this connection to the spirit of the divine through practices like mindfulness, meditation, spending time in nature, even engaging in creative pursuits or, acts of service.
It's about creating space in our lives for those moments of stillness, those experiences that connect us to something bigger, that remind us of the beauty, the wonder that exists, in the world, and that inspire us to live with more purpose, more intention.
Exactly. And that leads us to a story that's often, misunderstood, a story that challenges our assumptions about, maybe God, justice, prophecy, all of it. The book of Jonah.
Jonah, the reluctant prophet, the guy who tries to run away from God's call. It's such a dramatic story full of symbolism, these unexpected twists and turns.
Jonah's not exactly, a model of obedience. He gets this direct command from God. Go to Nineveh, this city known for its wickedness, and preach repentance. But instead of, embracing his mission, he hops on a ship going in the opposite direction.
He's trying to outrun his destiny. But as we see in the story, you can't really hide from that inner calling,
Yeah.
that voice deep down that urges us to step into alignment with our true purpose. And so a storm comes up, the ship's in danger of sinking. Jonah, he realizes he's the cause of all this trouble, he confesses, asks the sailors to, throw him overboard.
It's a powerful image, right, of facing the consequences of our choices, of owning up to our mistakes, and being willing to make amends, even if it means sacrificing our own comfort, our security.
And then, of course, there's that, that famous scene with the whale. Jonah gets swallowed whole, spends 3 days and nights in the belly of the beast. And Peterson, he interprets this as a symbol of descending into the unconscious, into those depths of our own shadow selves, those parts of ourselves that we try to deny, that we repress, but that ultimately hold the keys to transformation, to growth.
It's a metaphorical death and rebirth. Jonah, he has to confront his fears, his resistance, his own darkness before he can, emerge transformed and ready to fulfill his mission.
It's like a reminder that sometimes we need to go through those dark nights of the soul, those, periods of introspection, of struggle, those moments when we feel lost, alone. And it's in those depths and those moments of, facing our own inner demons that we often discover the seeds of our greatest strength, our resilience.
We do. And Jonah's time in the whale, it's not just about, punishment. It's also about reflection, about reconnecting with that inner voice, that, that divine spark that guides us toward our highest good. He prays, he repents, he surrenders to a power greater than himself. And through that process of, inner work, he finds forgiveness, clarity, the strength to continue his journey.
It's a good reminder that even when we've made mistakes, when we've strayed, when we feel lost or unworthy, there's always the possibility of redemption. We can always choose to turn back towards the light, to seek forgiveness, to make amends, to start anew.
You can. And Jonah's story also highlights the transformative power of mercy. After being vomited up on dry land, he finally goes to Nineveh, delivers God's message. Yeah. And you know what? The people, they repent. They turn away from their wicked ways, and God spares the city.
It's powerful. A reminder that change is always possible, that even those who seem lost, those who've done terrible things, they're capable of transformation, of redemption, of choosing a different path.
They are, and it challenges our assumptions about justice, about punishment, about the nature of forgiveness. Jonah, he's actually angry that God has spared the Ninevites. He wanted to see them punished, But God reminds him that mercy is a greater virtue than vengeance, that compassion has the power to transform even the hardest of hearts.
It's a message that's so relevant to our world today, isn't it? When there's so much division, judgment, condemnation. Jonah's story, it challenges us to see the potential for good in everyone, to offer grace, forgiveness, to believe in the possibility of redemption, both for ourselves and for others.
It does. It's like we're all in need of a little bit of that Jonah-style transformation, that willingness to face our fears, let go of our resistance, surrender to something greater than ourselves, to embrace, the fullness of who we are, shadows and all.
And to remember that true compassion. It's not about, condoning wrongdoing. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity of each individual, even those who strayed. It's about holding space for both the light and the shadow, for the potential for both good and evil that exists within each of us.
It is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into these biblical stories and their relevance to our lives today, what are some of the key takeaways? What can we apply to our own journeys, to our relationships, to our communities, to the world around us?
Well, I think one of the most important lessons is, the power of stories. These narratives, passed down through generations, they shape how we understand the world. They transmit wisdom, they inspire us, they challenge us, they comfort us, they connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
And these stories, they're alive, they're vibrant, full of meaning. They speak to something deep within us, to those universal longings, those timeless truths, those enduring struggles that make us human. They invite us to engage with them, to wrestle with their meanings, to extract those nuggets of wisdom that can guide us on our own journeys.
Exactly. And another key takeaway, I think, is the importance of wrestling with those big questions, those existential dilemmas that have been around well, forever. It's about engaging in that dialogue with, I don't know, with the divine, however we understand it, questioning, challenging, seeking understanding, and ultimately, forging our own unique paths.
It is. It's not about blind obedience or, passive acceptance. It's about actively engaging with those forces that shape our lives, both internal and, well, and external, and striving to align ourselves with those principles that lead to a more, I don't know, more meaningful, purposeful, fulfilling existence.
Absolutely. And finally, I think it's crucial to remember the transformative power of sacrifice. Whether it's sacrificing our comfort, our security, our desires, our ego, it's through those acts of letting go, of surrendering to something greater than ourselves, that we create space for new possibilities, for growth, for our lives to, align more fully with our, well, with our highest aspirations.
That's beautifully put. Sacrifice, it's not about deprivation or, self-punishment. It's about making conscious choices, about prioritizing what truly matters, about investing in something larger than ourselves,
Yeah.
and recognizing that true fulfillment, well, it often comes from contributing to, the well-being of others.
It does. So there you have it, everyone, a deep dive into the world of biblical stories and, well, and how they connect to our lives today. We've explored human nature, good versus evil, the search for meaning, transformation, relationships, community, the struggle to live the life that reflects our highest values.
We have. And these stories, they're not just ancient history, they're mirrors, reflecting our own inner conflicts, our aspirations, our potential for, well, for both greatness and folly, our capacity for growth, transformation, redemption.
They really are. And we encourage you to keep exploring these narratives, to wrestle with their meanings, and to discover how they can, inform your understanding of the world, your relationships, and, well, in your own unique journey through life.
And remember, as you navigate the complexities of life, as you face your own challenges, as you try to make sense of the world around you, and as you search for that sense of, meaning and purpose that gives your life direction and, well, significance, you're not alone. We're all in this together, walking this path, sharing these stories, supporting each other along the way.
We've only scratched the surface, really, of what these stories have to offer, and we encourage you to read Jordan Peterson's book, We Who Wrestle with God, and to, well, continue your own deep dive into these powerful narratives.
Happy exploring, everyone. May your journeys be filled with insight, meaning, and those moments of, awe and wonder that remind you of the beauty and mystery that lies at the heart of, I don't know, the human experience.